And there is Spanish interpretation available. And if we could have all the guests to please keep their microphones and videos off, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Sarah. So we're going to call the meeting to order at 5:31. I have 6 board members present. Board member De La Torre will be joining us shortly. That is our roll call. So if we want to all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. And you can place your hand on your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I really should have unmuted everybody because I feel silly doing that by myself, but so be it. Approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted? Moved by Craig, seconded by Ralph. Roll call vote. Ralph?
Yes.
Lori? Lori?
Yes, I
Okay.
said yes,
Maria?
but you did.
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
And I am a yes. So the agenda is approved, 6-0. So let's go to major action item 1, adoption of learning continuity and attendance plan, LCP. Dr. Drotti or Dr. Mora?
Yeah, I'll go first, and then I'll pass it on to Dr. Mora. So if you recall, Dr. Mora went over the entire plan last week, and we did, and then feedback was taken from you all, and different people in the community. So we made some adjustments to it that Dr. Mora will speak to, but I want to kind of back up and really, since there'll be people online here, I want to back up to give context of how we got here. Just more or less, this is a response to just sometimes you hear information about where did we get input from community and so on. So let me kind of provide that context, historical context. And then we'll pass it on to Dr. Mora. If you remember, when we closed down for distance learning, we started a lot of conversations in the formal conversations in June with a lot of different constituents. And then we obviously we first had to meet with our teachers in terms of how distance learning was working. There were 65 teachers in the room with administrators and so on. So those meetings occurred throughout the summer to establish the current distance learning plan, and also plans of coming back. So consider that's one group, 65 teachers, administrators that we sought input from, and it was like I said, week by week meetings, long meetings, and I think so they helped us establish the plan. In the meantime, we also had a smaller group of CTA union representatives meeting with at the bargaining table with Dr. Kelly. So those meetings occurred throughout the summer. So you have 2 groups going at the same time. So from there, feedback was taken back and forth to come to that agreement. So if you so those are 2 separate groups we had there. While we were meeting in those conversations, things started being formulated in terms of state protocols and expectation from SB 98 and so on. From that helped us form, start the formation of a plan for distance learning and possible, if we were to come back in person, that are aligned to those state expectations. We created some preliminary plans based on those expectations, and then we went out and started meeting with different stakeholder groups. CDAC, for example, is one I had a meeting with, which is the Special Education Committee, DAC committee. We gave us a lot of feedback, I'll say written feedback. We incorporated a lot of that information. So you have teachers, as I just mentioned before, you have the CDAC. Another group we met with is the DLAC, which represents a lot of the English learning groups. They gave us a lot of feedback on the back and forth with what we were proposing. And furthermore, and then we met with LCAP PAC. The LCAP PAC is a group of parents that we select from representing the unduplicated population of our student body. So we met with them. And Dr. Mora led them through several series of meetings in which they're providing feedback, verbal and written. We incorporated that information. We then went into PTA meetings. I had, I believe, 2 PTA meetings in which I shared with them our thoughts. A lot of them very opinionated people. It gave us a lot of written feedback and verbal feedback, so we incorporated some of that information. And then I also had a meeting with, in the summertime with the 2 principals of the high school, the 3 principals of the high schools were able to select the ASB leaders to come to a meeting with me, and we presented some of our ideas, and they also provided feedback in which we incorporated. And then from there, we went to the general population in which we surveyed the entire community about their thoughts about distance learning. So that was one set of surveys that I went out to the entire community. I believe we have over 6,000 respondents and written comments in which we spent all summer taking their information and assimilating it. So that's the general population. And then after they gave that feedback, when the plans were forged into something more tighter, we then surveyed the parents again, in which they gave us feedback, more feedback about some options that we considered. And then from there, remember we had the town hall meetings, 3 town hall meetings, one in the GEMS pathway, Lincoln pathway, no, I'm sorry, one for elementary, secondary, and then Malibu. And we had a lot of people. And in there, we requested people to write in comments about what we were proposing, and then we collected those feedback from there. And then, so from all of those things, we established essentially the plan that people are experiencing now in distance learning is a culmination of all those meetings that we have with all the public comments. And so when when parents are feeling what's happening now, it is a result of those meetings that we've had. So I would say that we had a lot of feedback. We can show people all the different written comments we have, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments that we have to kind of siphon through to establish the current plan. We did not finalize everything because there's 2 components to this thing. There's a distance learning component and a plan for coming back. We have not finalized the coming back plan because we need to cut that short, knowing that we need to open up school in a distance way. So our energies went to that. And we are now in the process but we did indicate some of the research and work that we have done so far with some ideas for being able to come back in a safe way, which is aligned to state protocols. Although it's still a draft, it's not complete, we will continue to start engaging families with that process now, and it'll be a pretty robust process. We'll take the community through to get to a place where people feel safe and able to, when we are able to come back, that people feel safe to teach and students feel safe and our staff feels safe, and then we're able to kind of just engage in our work. There's some details that's still unfinished with those things that Dr. Mora is going to share about, but I wanted to kind of give that backdrop as a response to some of the emails I've seen just from the community about where did you get these ideas from, or what comments did you say? And I just wanted to say, we spent all summer talking to folks to come up with what's happening now. If you remember, the distance learning people are experiencing now is different from what people experience in the spring, primarily because of we responded to people's comments, okay? And then we will now continue to work and solidifying those pieces. There's a survey coming out tomorrow from parents. Please fill this out. It'll be a week just to evaluate how things are going right now in distance learning. And then we will continue to start the process of engaging the community, all the different stakeholders, somewhat in a similar way. We could probably incorporate more. Principal parent conversations at the local sites to incorporate that as a part of the feedback loop. But we're going to start talking about reopening and what that may look like, and the challenges and solutions that we might have in place. So I just wanted to kind of give that backdrop to the entire community, that that we're not seeking input. We're seeking input. It's just there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of positions that people have, and we have to siphon through all of that to try to meet the needs of everyone, and at the same time fulfill the statutory requirements that we have to fulfill from the state and the county office in terms of safety and so on. So with that said, I'm gonna bring up Dr. Mora so she can talk about some of the adjustments we made. And I just want to remind everybody, this is still a process. We heard feedback. If our language needs to be adjusted, we can adjust it today. And you can still provide us that input. And I think maybe perhaps today we can really, if there's some kind of a language confusion or anything, I want to make sure that we have that captured. So you guys will have to help us. Sometimes it's difficult. You have 7 board members say some things and we think we got it. We might not. So, and that happens in negotiations. Sometimes with negotiations, language comes and people have different interpretations. So today what I want to do is make sure we solidify and anything that you guys might want us to really solidify, and then we move from there, knowing that there's still a lot of work to do for the second phase of this work, which is a reopening. So with that said, Dr. Mora, why don't you take over?
Thank you, Dr. Drotti. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So good evening, Board President Keene, members of the board, Dr. Drotti, cabinet and guests. This evening, I will be reviewing the adjustments made based on comments and inputs that we received from the board and the community in relationship to our learning continuity and attendance plan. So what I'm going to be focusing on is the various components. So at our last meeting, I went through the entire plan and really unpacked each of the sections. So for today, I'm going to only identify what sections, focus in on the sections where we made adjustments. So the general information section just set the stage for the development of the plan, right? Really speaking to what were the challenges that we've been facing in regards to the physical closure of schools and the COVID-19 and its implications to teaching and learning and just families and the community as a whole. So there were no major adjustments made within this particular section of the learning continuity and attendance plan. In the stakeholder engagement, we really articulated the journey that we had engaged in order to craft this proposal for all of you. This by no means states that we will not continue to engage our community. It just really sets the context and tells the story of the process that we participated in, how we engaged various stakeholders, parents, students, staff members in order to gather their input to create this proposal that is before you. The next section really speaks to continuity of learning. And this is a section where we did receive comments and feedback. Specifically, the feedback that we received really delved into the in-person offerings that we were planning and are working towards being able to provide our families once it is safe for us to open. So one of the things that I did within this particular section was clarify that the plans for in-person instructional offerings are still under development and that they're going to evolve based on student, staff, and parent input, as well as any new information we receive from our governing agencies. So as Dr. Drotti mentioned, there are different phases that really delineate when we are able to bring students back onto campus. At this point in time, we've been given the flexibility and to be able to bring our students with special needs and English learners onto campuses in order to do one-on-one assessments and to provide cohort instruction. At this point, we have been able to develop protocols and guidelines for in-person one-on-one assessments and evaluations for students with with IEPs and for English learners. And we have started the implementation of those protocols this week, and that has been successful. So we'll continue to learn from that implementation and utilize those key learnings to really now look into working with our teachers and our bargaining units to develop protocols and guidelines for us to be able to bring small cohorts of students with special needs and English learners in a tiered, phased approach based on greatest need. So we are working on those pieces as we speak. So as we're engaging in the process of developing these various plans, what our intention is to continue working with our site principals to collect more targeted input from their school communities. So not only will we be providing surveys from the district level, but we're also going to be engaging with our principals in order to get more targeted information from families as it relates to their respective school communities. Included in this particular section, I also identified that we are exploring viable options to bring cohorts of students for in-person learning experiences beyond the students that have currently been identified as being able to return onto campus. So once we have those protocols in place for the cohorts of students with special needs and English learners, that will give us additional information for us to really begin to think about when it is safe to do so. How do we begin to bring other cohorts of students onto the campus to participate in various learning experiences? I know this for many of our stakeholders, and even for the board, this is something that's thought of as DL plus, distance learning plus, right? How do we bring students onto campus in a safe way to receive additional instructional experiences, whether that is whether that's our VAPA courses or our science courses or any of the clubs, really looking at when is that going to be possible for us to do, and making sure that we have those protocols in place to be able to do so when the clearance is in place. We are also looking at exploring options for live streaming. I know some of the questions came up of if and when we are ready to reopen, and what are those possible models for in-person instruction if we are having to reduce the number of students on campus in half, and if students are not present in the building receiving in-person instruction. Are there options for us to explore when students are at home in order to be able to access what's taking place in the classroom? So right now we are currently exploring options for live streaming and to see if that is something that we can explore and implement as we continue moving forward. We also are continuing to take a look at what would that all online option be for families if they're choosing not to participate in a combination of in-person and remote learning experiences, really delving specifically at the secondary. What will that look like, and what options can we provide our families? So those are the major portions within the plan that have been updated as it relates to continuity of learning, specifically the in-person offerings that have been outlined in the plan. In relationship to mental health and social emotional learning, there were no major adjustments. If anything, it's just correction and clarification. The same thing you'll see is taking place for school nutrition, no major adjustments. What I did do for the pupil engagement and outreach was I ended up just removing some of the hyperlinks and actually including the September 2020 attendance recovery activities in the actual narrative. So that way that could be, once the document is translated, that could be visible there instead of having links. And then lastly, the increase and improved services, the section that was missing was the percentage of increase and improved services that we've provided for our students. So I went ahead and included that particular percentage in the plan so that it was really clear what that increased service was for our unduplicated students. Again, unduplicated is English learners, low-income students, and our homeless and or foster youth student population. So those are the adjustments that we made to the plan as it relates to the feedback and the comments that we received this past week. And then I also wanted to just take a moment to just review the projected budget again. So I did receive additional information earlier today. So the budget will be revised, especially as it relates to the equitable services pieces that are the ESSERs and one of the funding sources for the CARES Learning Mitigation Fund, the Learning Loss Mitigation Fund. So I had shared at our last meeting that there is an equitable service piece that we have to identify and allocate so that our private schools have access to these funding sources. So we're working on making those adjustments. So when all of that is completed, we will be able to share that with the board during the first interim. So I did want to take a moment to once again just review what these funds are. So the ESSER is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. So you're able to see that this is allocated to the district based on our Title I Part A allocation. And then you're seeing here in the fourth row what the allocation is for our district and for private schools. And you're able to then see also the resource code. So I know this is something, sometimes you're thinking, what does that code mean? That just lets us know that this funding source is linked to this particular code or number. And then this lets us know that for the ESSER, we do have to make sure that we are providing the equitable service allocation for the private schools. And although the deadline is for us to spend these resources is September 30th, 2022, we are actually going to be utilizing the allocation and these funding sources now, right? Some districts may need more time because they receive additional resources, but for us, we are utilizing these resources at this moment in time in order to be able to meet the various expenditures, actions, and services delineated in the plan. The Learning Loss Mitigation Fund is made up of 3 different funding sources. We have the GEAR, which is the Governor's Emergency Education Relief. And this is based on pupils ages 3 to 22, right? And for us, we received an allocation of $613,655. You see the funding source, the resource code, pardon me. And then this lets us know that we do have to make sure that there's that equitable services allocation set aside for private schools. The deadline again for us to utilize these funds is September 30th, 2022. But again, we are planning on utilizing these resources in the present time in order to address our actions and services. The Coronavirus Relief Fund, you see the distribution formula here, the dollar amount that was allocated to our district, which is $4.1 million. We do not have to allocate equitable services from this particular fund, and we have until December 30th of this year to exhaust these resources. And last, we have the State General Fund. You'll see that this is based on the LCFF entitlement. We received $795,192 for this fund. There are no equitable services, so this stays completely within our learning community. And we have to utilize these funds by the end of this year, this fiscal year. So at this point, these are the various funding sources that we are utilizing. I just wanted to take a moment to just clarify, because I recall at the last meeting, I didn't go through it as detailed. So I want to be able to clarify the deadlines, and that doesn't mean we are not going to be utilizing these funds this year. We actually have plans for that, and it's part of the proposal before you. So our next steps. At this point, I am asking the board for the board approval of the learning continuity and attendance plan. Our next step will be to submit this plan to the County Office of Education by September 30th. So once it's approved, I will be submitting the plan. And then we'll be posting it to our website, and then I'll await for any comments from the County Office of Ed in regards to the contents of our plan and make any adjustments as needed. I will be bringing forth the the feedback that we received from the County Office of Ed at a later meeting, so that you are able to provide any guidance and input on those comments. So at this point, I will open it up for any comments or suggestions from the board.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mora. I don't.
John, I just have one question.
Hold on, Maria, before we do that, I'm just checking to see if there's any, excuse me, Maria.
There's one.
Checking to see if there's any public comment.
Yes, there's one.
On this item?
Yes, on this item.
Okay, then let's take the public comment on this item.
Okay.
I think. See, isn't that C1?
Yeah, but she's talking about lack of art at Lincoln Middle School, which is certainly not a comment on this issue. So I think
Oh, so you want to consider that a public
that's a
comment?
general
Public comment, yeah.
Okay.
It's a general public comment.
Okay, sorry about that then.
So then I have Lori and then Maria.
Okay, I mean, what I was actually going to suggest was that we hear from the public first.
Oh,
But
but
I'm
I have
gonna go
no one
first.
on this topic. Yeah, it's like I don't have anybody on this item.
Okay, that's great.
I did actually want to comment on this.
Okay, let's take the,
Fine. Well,
Maria,
yeah,
unless
Yeah.
your question
No,
is
go
a
ahead.
clarifying question. We have one speaker, let's take the one speaker and then let's
Yeah, yeah.
clarify and discuss.
And discuss and everything.
include and- All right, we have one speaker, that's Wendy Dembo. You will have 3 minutes on this item.
I thank you for taking my comment to the board, Dr. Jody, Dr. Mora. The surveys that you sent out had very, very small places for people to make comments. In some surveys, there was not even a place for parents to make comments. So I would just like to make sure, I mean, as you well know, I write letters directly to the board, but many parents do not know that that's an option and that's something that they can do. So I would be happy if in your surveys, you could be sure to put a place where people could actually write comments, because between picking from options 1 to 3 isn't really a true option. So that would be my thought. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Tembo, and I think that's actually a terrific idea. And maybe when staff puts survey out, they can let the public know that if they do want to speak in a longer format with less restrictions, they can always email the board, which they can do anybody, but let's remind them. Thank you so much. So now we will go to comment on this item. But before we do comment and discussion, we should probably have a motion in a second so we can open comment on it. Is there a motion? I see Craig, I see seconded by Maria. And now let's have discussion. So I have Lori, then Maria.
Okay.
We'll see who's next.
So first of all, Dr. Moore, I appreciate your presenting again and focusing on the amount of money that we stand to receive as long as we submit properly and timely a learning and continuity plan, which I think is what you're trying to get us to do here. So I appreciate that. And for anyone who's watching, I think you do need to read that slide carefully and recognize that there are millions of dollars at stake here that are to address learning loss and to address the needs of our community during this horrific time. I support the motion. What I would like to do, if it's possible, and it's very hard for me to, I've been trying to go back and forth between the documents, but I think it's page 6 of the actual plan, the red line version. Basically, my desire would be this: rather than try to wordsmith at the dais here, what I would really like to do is have the language that is included in the plan, and I think that's the place where it goes, state really clearly that we will be exploring hybrid models that include those which enable teachers to deliver instruction concurrently to students who are attending in person, along with those who are attending remotely. And that's the whole thing we've been discussing about live streaming and using an owl or whatever is the proper technology. There must be multiple ones, I hope. But I think my concern with the language as it stands is it isn't clear that one of the options I think we were trying to put forth last week was a model which would basically pretend I'm teaching a first grade class. Half of whatever the prescribed number of students who come in person come to school. The ones who are not at school are at home, and they're all attending the same classroom instruction. So that in effect, then when we either flip the students who are in the classroom and with those who are outside, and some of them remain outside, there is no need really for totally independent other kinds of asynchronous instruction, except insofar as everyone's doing it. So everybody's sort of attending the same thing at the same time. That would be the goal. We know that, as John has dubbed that, that's the moonshot. So we know and understand that there is a concern that rightfully, Dr. Dradi and Dr. Mora, that you don't want to promise something that we may not be able to deliver. But what I am hoping for is that the plan reflects very clearly, so that anyone who looks at it during this comment period will understand exactly what we're trying to explore. And so that's one piece that I would just like to have more clearly expressed. And then the other thing I would like to be clear on is that any plans we develop will ensure that students whose families decide that a return to in-person instruction is too risky for them, that those people will have access to teachers with appropriate subject matter expertise, and as much live interaction with teachers as possible, so that people don't get bogged down in this notion of we're going to a total virtual learning academy or something like that, where they never have any teacher interaction. And again, I understand that there may be a need for that. We have to acknowledge that, particularly, I think probably only in secondary subjects, there may be places where we have to use a virtual platform. But I think we want to be expressing that we are looking to find plans that reduce the amount of virtual academy or virtual learning to the extent possible. So I get that we want to thread a needle between over-promising and saying what we're looking at, but I feel that it's really important that we say what we're looking at and what our goal, express our goals clearly. Because I don't want people to read this and not understand that we are seriously looking at these things. And yet I also want them to know that if they don't pan out, we'll be back to looking at other models. So I don't know exactly, I don't know that I can sit here and write that at this very moment, but if people agree with me, maybe we could adopt conceptually that as part of the motion, and we could work together to just wordsmith a little bit to make that clear.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Because I agree with Lori and was going to raise similar things myself, but I maybe should have jumped in with a clarifying question earlier. One of the things I've learned in 6 years on the board is it's really important to figure out if you're approving something that will later take place without us checking back. So I can't tell, like page 22 of the presentation, Virtual Learning Academy for Secondary, details still in discussion. I understand that there is a time crunch to get this passed. There's a lot of money on the line. It seems to me that it's not particularly directed at the transitional phase as we're coming back to school, and therefore the board will get another, like, are you going to come back to us and say we are currently in distance learning, we are going to make a transition to something that's not this model, but a new model, hopefully a more in-person model. And now let's talk about what that looks like. Do we get another bite at this apple?
Yeah,
Or,
you'll get a bunch of bites at it.
okay, so if we, to Lori's point, if we don't wordsmith this, because, you know, the thing on page 6 that you highlighted sort of says it, and if we were really worried it would get away, we could tighten it up, but it's not bad. It's just not as clear as maybe you and I would want it to be. Do we need to do that now, or are we going to have lots of bites at the apple to make sure that whatever comes after 100% distant is things that we on the board are comfortable in that moment with transitioning to?
I'm going to rephrase the clarifying question because I think it'll be tighter. So Dr. Mora, do we need to insert the adjustments that board member Lieberman suggested into the formal document, or because you've already spoken them into the public, will we be working on that and it is irrelevant if they are in the formal document now and we will be addressing them down the road? Which is the best plan of action?
Yeah, so we are going to continue engaging in these conversations. We do not have to include it, but if the board would like for us to include it, we can include it. But regardless of whether it's in there or not, the intention is for us to continue engaging in conversations and developing the plan for bringing our students in person beyond just small cohorts. Like, what is going to be our plan of action to bring all of our students to campus in one way or another to receive in-person instruction. So we're going to be engaging in ongoing conversations and bringing to the board where we are in that process and eliciting input.
So approving this plan as written does not commit this board to any particular modality of whatever comes next in our progression to 100% on-campus learning.
It doesn't.
What this plan does is it says, this is where we're at this time. We're going to be continuing to engage in conversations, but we do have a plan of action for distance learning to continue for the learning continuity of students. We do have a plan of action to address the learning loss for our students. We have been engaged in conversations around bringing students onto campus through one-on-one assessments, through the cohorts that the agencies have allowed us. And we are going to continue to develop further plans to bring our students back when we are allowed to do so.
So I think, let me just add to that, because I think, I know where John and Lori is coming from. It's probably because of the comments that people have, you know, when we, in the past, when we used the term academy, we were under a different thought process of how do we address a possible situation in which, when we have our teachers in person and there are students at home, especially the secondary, that may not have access to a direct teacher. And that has always been an issue from beginning, and we've collected information on that. We have not flushed out a game plan for that, and we're probably gonna get rid of the name Academy because that causes consternation out there. So as of 2 weeks ago, for example, we got introduced to, from comments, some softwares or camera systems that could possibly allow us to have students at home watch what's going on inside the classroom in a live fashion. We have a meeting with the CEO of the company that has one of the technologies next week. Paulus Verdes, I've been in communication with the superintendent there, in which they're gonna go in that direction, and I've been in communication with him about his thoughts on it. So we have a partner to possibly bounce ideas with, but we are pursuing on that. Now, in the case we can't deliver on that, then we go back to the same problem that what was had, which is, how do you address that situation if we cannot match a teacher with a specific subject at the high school or secondary level? So we know that's a problem. We don't want that. We're going to try to find ways to address that. But I guess the question becomes, when somebody doesn't see that flushed out here, there might be concern that we're done with the issue. We're not. We're just not in the beginning stages of starting to have that conversation. So whatever it is that we need to put out there to put people at ease about the work forward, is what we're interested in without overpromising on something that we might not be able to deliver. That's the staff's interest is in that. And if there's a better way to word that to address both those concerns, then
I think it would be best. I think Lori brings up an important point in terms of what the document could accurately say to best capture where we feel. And Craig bringing up the point of, well, we don't need to wordsmith it now because we will be working on this later. I think we should take board member comments and then see where we are when the comments are in. So I have Maria next.
No, thanks. My comments are similar to what, Lori and Craig have already mentioned, but I think that's true. We have to make sure that there's a lot of questions, and I know we have to address it in generalities, but I think it's maybe once we come up with the actual plan itself, it's just how are we going to present it to the community so the community understands this is an ever-changing, it's a fluid document. It's going to be changing because from last week to this week, last night I was at the VAPA meeting, and they came up with all these, software that they're for the arts that parents brought in.
Yeah.
So it's my whole thing is how is it that we're able to involve, let's say parents are asking because they might be involved in the business or whatever, and can bring bring to our attention some of this, the software or whatever we need to make it easier for us to to be able to teach once. I like the whole idea of the streamline, to be able to teach, the teacher would be in the classroom and then teach both in class, and then other kids at home could see the teacher. I mean, that's the best case scenario. That's something that was just brought up. I mean, we hadn't even talked about that 2 or 3 weeks ago. So again, as I think the school districts are all talking, are all getting ready to come back, and everybody share ideas. I think that's how I think we're going to move forward from there on. So I'm fine with that. I mean, my only concern is that, in other words, I think the other bigger complaint was that people want a voice. So I'm figuring if they're not in any of these captured, groups of individuals, all these packs, then perhaps, I don't know, somewhere in there that it's really the key, and hopefully they're involved at their own sites, and that they go back to the PTAs or to the school site councils and have those conversations, or even within the classroom, the teacher has conversations with the parents to get ideas, to get their feedback. And somehow then the teachers, when they meet with the principal, I mean, to me, that sounds so simple. I mean, maybe I'm just saying it too simplistically, but I don't see why it can't happen that way, where in that case, and the principals would have a better idea of what their individual schools needs are, and based upon the parents, communication to their teachers and then to the principal. I don't know if that can be put in, or something in generalities in that sense that we really do, and the idea that they can always write us a letter too. That, and like I said, we always bring up those suggestions at these meetings. So. Yeah.
I think I think Lori wanted to clarify something. I think Dr. Drotti, you mentioned in the beginning of your opening today in the meeting. It goes to Maria's point. Dr. Drotti talked about principal and parent talks at sites.
Yeah.
You said add to the feedback loop.
Yeah.
So I think that's that idea. We need to create opportunities for people at each site level to have that interaction run by their principals, so everybody does have a chance to get their voice. And the fact that Dr. Drotti brought that up, I think it's clearly on their radar, and they'll be working on that.
Yeah.
Laura, you had a clarifying point on something?
Well, it was to that point. I share what Maria was trying to get at, and I think, and I also want to say that the comment that was made by the speaker before gives us one other way in, which is to allow open-ended kinds of responses in surveys. But the other thing I've been thinking about too is, how do we get to people who aren't in PTA or aren't in one of the groups that we've designated? And so I don't know whether this is the right approach, but I think one thing that could be considered is having tasking principals with holding school-wide meetings and obtaining input from parents and staff, and then they would bring that to the district and to the board. And you know, that needs to be thought through. I don't think that 16 different people should have to do this 16 different ways. We could figure out an approach and something to help them do that. But rather than, I mean, we obviously can't hold a district-wide meeting that enables two-way participation, which is part of what people are craving. Because you can't have thousands of people on the line talking, or we'd be here for, you know, a week. But I think there are possibilities that we should explore that could be done site by site. And so while I don't want to suggest that we just, you know, say, hey, you have to do this, and we're not going to give you any guidance, I think maybe that's something you could discuss with principals about how maybe they could construct something like that they could all do, or some site-based approach that enables more two-way participation for people who aren't already caught by one of the stakeholder groups that we are going to.
Yeah. So can I just, and I like the idea, and I just wanna, and this is more or less for the public and perhaps for the board too, but we're talking about a very complex set of things that we have to accomplish. Yeah, let me give you an example, right? If you go across the entire nation, the people that are addressing COVID and people that are in person, you'll notice they have all settled in on this hybrid component, right? Because there's some protocols to make sure the people are safe, which is limiting the people in the classrooms. And the only way that school districts across the nation are able to address that is by splitting the classroom in half. And that forces us to this certain component. So my only thing I want everybody to know is we as a district, we can certainly say, let's go open-ended and talk to everybody. What do you guys want to do? Other people aren't in those meetings or indeed, they don't have the preview of what the protocols or what the health department are saying to be able to formulate a plan. So our approach was more or less, if to even go out there to say, hey, what do you guys want to do? Just have it open-ended. You imagine it wouldn't be anything being formed. And so what we try to do is siphon through all those things and try to get to a place where we know something that could be functional, and then we bring it to people and talk through it. And I think, and I want to make sure that I'm hoping people are not under illusion that we can just go out there with an empty sheet of paper.
No, can I clarify? I did not mean anything like that. I think you have to structure, you know, what is possible, but the point is to be able to allow people to respond to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You don't want, I don't mean, hey, sky's the limit, suggest anything you want, which people are free to do if they want to anyway, but you're right. The propositions that you've put out there are because we have certain protocols we have to adhere to, and they dictate, you know, certain limits.
Opportunities, yes. And I know you all get that statement more or less for the community when we go out.
No, absolutely. That's important.
I have me, then Richard. And then if somebody else is getting the list, let me know.
John, can you put me on? It's Oscar.
You got it. Yeah, thanks, Oscar.
Thank you.
So it's funny, Ben, when you were talking at the beginning, you said, you know, we're trying to meet the needs of everybody. And I'm like, oh my dear, how does he really think we're going to try to have 10,000 plans? Yeah. And I'm glad that you clarified that a little bit. We're trying to hear the needs of everybody and meet as many people as we can with what we're trying to do. We're not trying to take it to the least common denominator. Yep. Which is great. I think what I'll say to this is I like the suggestion of more stakeholder input with site-based meetings. I also want to make sure that Dr. Drotti, you and your staff lead the way on this. I don't think it needs to be board dictate that you are doing this. I think it's clear from Dr. Mora's report and from what you said, Dr. Drotti, that you heard the comments of the board and that you heard the comments of the public. Yeah. You mentioned Distance Learning Plus. You mentioned more on-campus opportunities for students. You mentioned the concept of let's explore live streaming classes so we have a continuity of instruction. Yeah. Teachers are doing one lesson plan for all their students at one time. You talked about the online option, what that will look like. Will it be distance learning like we have now? How will we, you spoke to every issue that we brought up, which means I know that you're hearing us. Yes. And I know that it's complex. So I'm encouraged that you brought up every issue. At the end of this whole discussion, we still have to address what board member Lieberman brought up, which is what do we want to do with the document that we're going to be approving tonight?
Yes.
I'm still concerned. I have some slight concerns with the document as written. I would like it to reflect a little more accurately what Dr. Moore presented and what you presented, but I don't want to wordsmith. So maybe when we go through all our comments, we can maybe identify the core of what we're talking about and then address that. So with that said, I'll go to TJ and then Oscar.
Got it.
Thank you, John. Dr. Mora, Dr. Drotti, thank you very much. I concur with my peers, all the comments thus far. I'm really glad that Craig said what he did. Craig, I'm happy you said, let me talk to Craig, my friend, I can see you there. First of all, I hate not being in the same room. And I've told my peers that I think that we could easily socially distance and get together, but I know that some of you still aren't ready for that. But I think there's something lost in the deliberative process. Craig, I appreciate your comments, particularly in clarifying, what is the effect of the major action item tonight? Is this a mandate that we have to do? You make this report and then we continue the deliberations, the dialogues, and can we do better in engaging our stakeholders? I think, yes, I think that's the answer. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate John saying I want to make sure that certain things are reflected. I mean, especially since we know them and there's no disagreement amongst the board nor the staff as to what this is. So I appreciate, Dr. Mora, your reflection of that and your affirming what's been said by the board both last week as well as tonight. One thing I wanted to say is that, I guess I have a lot of things to say, but one that I'd like to focus on is this business about the way in which your staff and the principals and sites go about the collecting of information and the process. And, one of our speakers spoke about how they knew how to contact us directly. I think that we believe we're doing a good job. I think we are doing a good job, but we can always do better. We always say that with regards to getting the word out to the community and how best to engage. And perhaps it is the principals that could be leading here. Lori said something like, we don't necessarily have to have, 14 different ways or however many different ways to do it, but I could make an argument that maybe each school site has its own culture and a way of engaging. And so I'm not going to at all tell staff how to do it, but I think staff is hearing us that we want you to get as best as you possibly can be at stakeholder feedback, which I think is something that you have in mind. And then it has me thinking a lot about the difficult spot that we are in as a community, and particularly those of us on this board, and trying to hear all of our brothers and sisters and others who have real concerns about the well-being of their children, the academic progress of their kids. We have employees who are very concerned about, their health and their profession. And it is important, and I hear Lori's clarifying comment, which I never thought she was saying something different, about having scenarios or how did you say it, Lori, parameters in which are presented for feedback. So I really appreciate that. But I think we don't want to lose sight that we're not a majoritarian democracy, right? Where, hey, with this technology, we could just let all 11,000 people on the Zoom call and we can just vote on the poll what we want to happen. I mean, we need to be able to let Dr. Drotti and his staff and the principals and the leaders at the sites engage with the parents to find out as closely as we can how to best serve the needs of our community. And I know that you're working at that. So I'm just articulating that because I think that many of us are getting emails saying, please articulate what you're thinking so we know where the board is at, where the district is at. And I'm feeling very proud to be a part of this board and part of the team. And because I know that is a deep value held by the persons who are charged at this moment of operating this district, both the COVID district, as John likes to say, and as well as the district we hope to get back to. So I'm okay with voting tonight as it is presented, with a caveat or with the notation, which Sarah does great minutes. She also does those great blurbs that go out electronically as to, hey, what did the board do at this meeting last night or the day before last, that there be some sort of capture there, right? So I think that it's important, and what I hear at least a couple of my peers say is that we need to capture where we're at in this moment, and particularly underscore what Jackie, Dr. Mora, and Dr. Dradi have said about that this cake is not baked, and this is a continual process of deliberation and exploration as to how to best serve the people in this community. So I'm happy to wordsmith. And John, as our president, I would like to say that there have been occasions where we've taken a little bit of a recess and we've done, what's it called? We wordsmith from the dais. We did that with unification stuff, and people thought we were crazy, but that was real democracy. So I mean, if that is the will of the board, I'm in with that. But I'm also happy to be in a place to say I can vote for this as it is, with the capture of the sentiment or the values that's been articulated by John, Lori, and Maria thus far.
Your comment is taken and received and well heard, which brings us to Oscar and then Ralph.
Yes, thank you, John, for calling on me. I appreciate all the comments being made. I think it's great, for us to give some feedback, to staff. One of the things that for me concerns me is, in terms of how we define sort of serving the students that are struggling the most right now with distance learning. So students with special education, special needs, how are we addressing them? English language learners, students that have historically not done well. How are we flagging those students, and how are we intervening? What does that intervention look like? What does the follow-up look like, with parents? What are the protocols that we're following, with teachers, to ensure that those students that are not engaging or not succeeding with with the distance learning plan, what type of supports can we offer them? And also, being that the county has allowed us, to serve those students, to bring in students, for on-site teaching and so forth. What is our plan to do that, to roll that out as soon as we can? I mean, we don't want to step ahead of the public health, experts, and that can change, right? At some point, they can say, you can do this or do that, and we have to adhere to that. But we should have a plan for that. I mean, the students that need the most, that's our commitment to equity, to support those students. So I just want to see more of a clear plan on that. Some of the comments that were made in the past, by parents, I want to see, at least an acknowledgement of that, and figuring out how we can address some of those concerns of like excessive screen time. I think, definitely is a concern, for some students more than others, but if parents are reporting back to us that that's a problem, then we have to acknowledge it and address it, and give, people options, so that they can continue the learning, with a different mode. It doesn't have to be, online and with all the screen time. If that's the problem, we should have some flexibility, so that we can address those concerns. So that's pretty much it. That's just the comments I wanted to make. I just, my main concern is that we have a well-defined plan, to serve the students that are not doing well, that have historically not done well. We know from the test data, from, everything, all the studies that we have done, we know who those students are and where our weaknesses are, and we just need to shore those up. So anyway, that's my feedback on the plan.
Great. Thank you, Oscar. Which will take us to Ralph.
Can I just say something about what Oscar mentioned, because I think
please,
it's important.
please,
I think it is true that we've heard from families about this screen time, particularly the younger kids. So we have collected that information, and for you all to know, we actually sat down today, first of a series of meetings we had with the teacher CTA and administration, and we have some and our interests are pretty aligned in terms of what we want to see about that issue about screen time and how we can make changes. And it was fairly clear, just because I sat in the negotiations, that there might be an interpretation of what we mean, misinterpretation, or not having clarity about the live instruction time, where so we know that's work we can start doing now with principals if there's confusion about that. So and then secondly, for the community, there's a survey coming out tomorrow asking directly those questions, and we need people to fill those things out because we're going to use that so that we can start making informed decisions, hopefully starting by this week and next week, and just how we can make those adjustments.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Ben. Thank you very much, Ben, for following up on those public comments and those parent concerns. Thank you.
Board Member Metcher.
So I'm getting lost in some of this, so let me go back and ask you a question. So Dr. Mora, this is a requirement either through the state or the county to produce this plan, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's part of SB Senate Bill 98.
Okay, and is there and the direction was to develop a plan, was there a date that had to be approved by?
Yes, we have to submit it by, it has to be approved by September 30th.
Okay. And then in that bill, is it just to have the plan? Is there an expectation of it being a rigid document, a flexible document? Is it to be updated at a certain point in time?
I think the document, the Senate bill allows us, it's a plan that we develop, but with any plan, if adjustments need to be made, we make those as we implement it, right? And that's been the case even with the LCAP, with the Local Control Accountability Plan. We develop a plan of action and then we make adjustments based on student need, data, input that we receive, and those adjustments are made throughout the year and throughout the implementation phase of that plan.
Okay, so when would you expect to report back to the board, with an update on the plan, how it's working, things that have already been implemented, or other changes you feel the board should weigh in on?
So what will happen once the plan is approved? I will be submitting it to the Los Angeles County Office of Ed. So they will be providing comments and feedback. So then by October 30th. So then I need to make sure that I'm bringing that to all of you. And during that time, I can give an update on the implementation of how the strategies and actions are taking place. But we don't have to wait until then in order to be able to come back to you to share where are we in our journey of developing a plan for reopening, right? Because as Dr. Dradi mentioned, we're sending out our survey on distance learning tomorrow, right? So all of that is going to provide us with data. The intention is to be able to share that information with the board so that they see what the input is from the community, from our staff, from students, from families in regards to the implementation of distance learning. In the same vein, we're going to still continue to elicit input from the community around what will in-person learning look like, right? And then be able to come back to you with all of that information, because we have to be developing those plans and hashing that out as we continue to implement and get feedback on distance learning. So I think it really, if you're asking me when we'll be here, it's really about when we're collecting that data and as we're eliciting input from the community. We are currently working on a reopening protocols and presentations. So I know that's something that's going to be coming soon to the board. So there'll be different times throughout this fall that will be coming to you with updated information in relationship to all of the plans and how things are working.
Great. So, partly I asked those questions, for my own benefit,
yeah,
but also to help, people who are here to understand the process. And I would ask the board, I'm ready to, make a motion to support the plan as submitted, so it can be submitted to LACO, because I'm confident that staff is hearing all the issues. There's no reason I don't believe there's a reason for us to, wordsmith a document that is a living, flexible document. It's a guideline for us to, continue what we're doing. And we all know that there are conversations happening daily with administrators, with teachers, with parents. There are groups meeting, and that the board should continue to ask questions, keep sort of the pressure on, lack of a better word, and staff give the direction, that this process there's so much stuff here that is new and hasn't been worked out, and will continue to be so as we move forward until we're 100%, back in the classroom, which is going to take time. And it's I don't know how can we better inform parents the process we're going through, because we continue to get emails that about people say what are we doing, we're going to be able to get students back on this day, the county is going to do a certain thing, and people, they may not be reading it properly, but are we getting the right information out so that people truly understand that we're understanding what the state and the county will allow us to do, and we're in preparation to submit what we have to submit and to be able to open, and it may look like X, and that may change to Y, just depending on the criteria that comes down. So anyway, so I feel confident, the staff has done incredible work. They've involved a substantial, portion of the community to be involved in this. And we need to move this forward so that work can continue rather than create a perfect document, because there is no such thing, particularly with this kind of document. So I'll move the staff report with the direction.
We haven't moved and seconded already. We're just discussing.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
We still have a motion on the table.
It's so long ago, I can't remember.
I know.
Only a call to the vote is right. He's calling.
We're not calling the vote yet. Wewe're not calling the vote yet because Lori has one adjustment. I want to make sure Craig was fully heard. So I have Lori, then Craig, and then we can maybe call the vote.
Great.
I just had one thought, which is, since there seems to be a growing consensus that the board seems to want to adopt, not wordsmith tonight and adopt this the way it is, I wonder if we could also give direction to staff to issue a very simple, straightforward press release that we've adopted this and why, and try to capture the things that Dr. Drotti, Dr. Mora, Craig, me, others have tried to say we want to be clear to people we're looking at. Incorporate that into a very simple press release, and then say, and there'll be reiterate there'll be another survey to follow or something like that. I'm not going to write the press release here, but the point is to, rather than wordsmith the document, try to express what we're trying to express, that we're concerned is not fully clear, though it is intended in the language of the current document, so that can be shared.
Maybe that press release could be the 4th grade writing model of the hamburger. Intro, body, conclusion. 3 paragraphs. Craig, you had a comment?
A hamburger model.
I've never heard that before either.
That's how my kids learned how to write essays.
No double cheeseburger. I mean,
Board member, bring back professionalism.
But that's
okay. I have to.
Special essay if you do the double cheeseburger.
So I think it bears saying. A bunch of people have said it. I think we're all agreeing with each other in a serial fashion. Now I'm thinking of breakfast cereal. Ugh, John. So look, it came up last time. Our staff did an amazing job of putting together what we have. And 3 weeks into it, last week, we were talking about what about this, what about that? And Ben said, I had promised myself I would be working on that in the 4th week, but in the first 3 weeks, we just needed to land the plane. So now we're in the 4th week, and in fact, we are talking about these things. I have incredible faith in 2 things: that our staff is absolutely working 27 hours a day with all their really demonstratedly wonderful expertise on this to bring us to the very best distance learning we can have, including adopting down the hours, the classroom minutes, which we all want to do, and it sounds like is well on its way. I don't have any doubt that working together with our community and our staff and the board, we're going to find a good hybrid model, a good next model to move back to. And I also hear very clearly that we're not committing to anything by voting yes on this report. So for me, I think the next step for us is to really, we, the board, need to be prepared to listen and help with the development of this hybrid model. Staff is fully engaged in working on it. And the other thing, and I totally agree with what Lori said, let's just pass it as it is. Let's put out a document that says, this is, however you say it, but that we're committed to developing with community input the very best next step model that we can put together is the hybrid return to school. And I would also say in there, and we are fully committed to getting our kids back on campus as soon as is safe. And short and sweet, and we know what we said. If people talk to us, we tell them and we move on. But I think we've all agreed to that.
Great. So I'm going to call the vote. I am going to suggest that maybe we can work with Gail, board leadership can work with Gail to fashion a short, sweet hamburger letter. So we have a motion. We have a second. We'll do a roll call. Ralph?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Oscar?
No.
And I'm a yes. So that's 6 yeses and 1 no. Did I get everybody?
Me,
Maria, sorry.
Maria, yes.
Okay, so it is 6 yeses and 1 no. Thank you very much. I believe we have one general public comment.
John,
Yes, sir, Richard.
is it, I don't want to, never mind. I was going to ask if we could still have a couple of comments about things and ask Ben some questions about, but I will wait until our next meeting at the Soups report. Sorry, forgive me.
Yeah.
So we have one public comment, and that is from Lydia Marraro. So Lydia, take it away. You have 3 minutes. If you're here.
There, and it says she's unmuted. Where'd she go?
Looking for her.
She was there, so I didn't know. Yeah, it says she's unmuted.
Oh, wait a minute. I see her. Wait.
I also had a comment.
There you are. Lydia, are you?
Is Lydia there?
I
Let's
see
do it.
her square and she is unmuted.
I think Wendy Dembo had a general public comment, so why don't we take her?
No, Wendy's comment was, I thought what she.
I'm not going to argue the issue. I think she signed up originally for a general public comment and then added a specific comment. I'm
Oh,
not
all right. I
It was a
misunderstood.
valid comment. It was short. Let's do a general comment.
Okay, I misunderstood that.
Yeah, I did too.
Here, okay.
I'm sorry. I thought I was putting the correct thing. Else.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Anyway, I would just like to say that you guys have done a fantastic job of having art in elementary school. For my daughter's first year in kindergarten, she had art once a month with a teacher, and the rest of the time she colored in pictures of Mr. Schwengel. But then you got PS Arts, and that was fantastic. And I know that the art at SAMO is fantastic, but she is at Lincoln and she was not able to take art in 6th grade, and she did not get into art for 7th grade. And I feel that all kids should be able to take a visual art class in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I have a friend whose daughter, who is fluent in Spanish, did not get into art in 8th grade this year, and one of the only other full year electives is Spanish, so that wouldn't really work for her. So I just want to kind of put a little bug in your ear that the kids at Lincoln would like to take full years of art. I know that the kids at JAMS are allowed to take full years of art at 6th, 7th, and 8th. So there's some sort of weird inequality going on. But also I just really feel that visual art is very important for this district. And I don't understand the void at Lincoln for 6th, 7th, and potentially 8th grade. So thank you.
Hey, Dr. Drotti or Dr. Mora, I'm putting my PTA president Lincoln hat on, and I remember this being a discussion at Lincoln years ago as we were trying to find more room for the electives. Is this something maybe you could put in a Friday packet, maybe get some information from Florence or from the Lincoln counselors? Because
Yeah.
I don't remember the issue well enough. It was like 8 years ago. I don't even remember last month. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, I think Lydia Moraro is now signed back in on her phone.
Hi, can you hear me on the
There
phone
you go.
now?
Great.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry about that.
That's
It
okay.
It did say your microphone is not working, but I thought it was because it was on mute or something. Anyhow, I am calling today to say thank you. As the president of SMAPA, I was very pleased that I came in the public comments a few weeks ago, actually maybe 2 weeks ago, asking you guys to resolve this brown paper ticket issue. And not only did you listen, all of you, Richard in particular, I must say, was brave enough to even meet with me and discuss how this could be done. But I am very grateful for all the visual performing arts, particularly theater and band and stairway, that you listened and that you helped make this right. I hope that you'll be able to recuperate this brown paper ticket money, although I don't believe that it will happen in full. But thank you, Dr. Drotti, for expediting this and understanding that we don't have a lot of money in the arts. All the programs are having a very hard time raising money because of COVID. Everybody is broke and we don't have any shows to put together and we're all struggling. So thank you so much for your speedy efforts and attention to that matter.
Thank you.
Unmuted. Thank you, Lydia. What a nice comment to close on.
I know. I think we don't, with no other comments, there's nothing else on our agenda that we can address. So I'm going to move to close this meeting. And we will see you all next week on October 1st for our regularly scheduled board meeting. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye all.